Good afternoon. It is day 5 of this journey, and today's episode is being released. You may have noticed a little later than usual. I had some pre planned time conflicts this morning, and basically the entire schedule went a little south. That said, today marks a really meaningful shift in how I'm structuring my work. So, starting today, I moved into a two-piece training system. Each session now has a primary and a secondary piece. So the primary piece gets the full recording treatment, multiple takes, focused evaluation, all the technical work that I typically do in a recording session. The secondary section of my daily session is there to maintain familiarity with the other piece. Only one or two light passes, no heavy corrections, just keeping it active. And those roles will alternate from day to day. A little history on what happened here was I had been working a week on the Boulevard piece, and I realized that it had been a while since I touched Be Prepared. And this was yesterday afternoon. I decided that I wanted to do a Be Prepared, and it went really well. And then I sat down and tried to design this system so that I didn't have to go off of a piece for a while and then come back and recall it. So again, goal: balance progress with retention. It would just be too easy for me to lose progress on one while I gain progress on the other. So before getting into today's work, I want to talk about that session from yesterday because it did set the stage for today. It was a real, actual integration point for me. I did 3 takes. It was an afternoon session, so I didn't want to really push past my normal practices. I moved from what was probably my strongest calibration take that I had done since starting to record myself. And that unto itself was very positive to feel. So this was the Be Prepared piece. And through a bit of an exploratory but technically expensive attempt, I tried to actually change the tone color so that I sounded a little more scarish and a little less gentleish. But again, it was a trade off because I'm still putting that all together. It didn't take. While the breath support stabilized, the A1 stopped being the way I wanted it to be. So I tried to find that balance. Coming in this morning, the goal was not to really push it further, but to reinforce what had happened. And this morning's Be Prepared session, the voice, when I started this morning, actually presented differently than it typically does. Normally, when I wake up in the morning, my speaking voice sits around a G1 or an A1. And this is, of course, naturally first when I'm in bed and laying down. When I was laying down this morning, and I woke up and I was even walking around, my speaking voice was at an E1, and on a whim, I threw out a B0 and it just came, which was really quite surprising. Unfortunately, by the time I got situated in front of the recording equipment and having done all my morning logging, the voice had come back up and was now sitting around a B1C1, a B1C2. The result of that was the pitches. Well, most of the pitches were there, but in Be Prepared, there's a drop to an A1, there's a drop to an F1, and they just didn't come out. I know I was putting it together correctly, and not really thinking about it, but it just was, there was no sound, move on. But that was also really an important shift for me because I was no longer aiming for notes, I was just aiming to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, so things worked plus and minus, but in general, it was definite forward motion. Um, One of the lines in Be Prepared, this is from The Lion King, the voice play arrangement. There is an exchange between one of the hyenas and Scar, where the hyena says, where do we feature? And Scar says, just listen to teacher. And I have a lot of theatrical background from my undergraduate studies, but mixing it with singing is very different. And I wanted to have a nice, low, menacing, yet uncaring, and just listen to teacher. But that's quiet, that's not supported, and it was barely inaudible in the recording. So, now I'm shifting my breath support, and it's audible, but the character feels completely wrong. So the nice thing about all of that is that I'm not thinking about how do I position breath, how do I stay on top of breath, how do I find a note. I'm actually thinking about the performative value of the piece, and that's really good for me. So let's move on to this afternoon. Like I said, I had conflicts all day. So the secondary session today was for Boulevard. Very light, just 2 takes. And it was really just to make sure everything was fine. Now, with the Boulevard piece, it begins an octave higher. I have talked about the section 1, section 2 differences of Boulevard of Broken Dreams and the way it was arranged by the bass gang. I am not as comfortable and sure of myself in this upper octave. And in the first take, it showed a small climb into where it's supposed to be. It also doesn't help that it, right off the bat, hits a D sharp 4, which is, as I've mentioned, at the very edge of my my range, my upper range. But it's not actually at the edge of it. It's just that the mechanics there are not trained to go grab it. However, even though I was weak coming in on the first take, I cleanly hit my D sharp 4 and continued on. Section 2, which is all in this range here, it went really, really well. I actually came out of this secondary calibration take feeling really good about it. I always note how I'm feeling after I've done a take. Sometimes it's like, yeah, it didn't go right, or yeah, it went right, or oh God, that felt good. And after my first take today, I had that felt good feeling. But I'm still very honest about it when I listen to it through. Then I did the second take, and my mindset for this one was don't go to the opening, already be there. You know where you're going to land, you're already in the air, just coast through it. And that worked. Got there, got through the D sharp 4, and what I noticed in the playback was what I can refer to as varying voice color. The notes were, for the most part, correct, but there were times the voice sounded strong, there were times the voice sounded a little wishy-washy. So it's not notes at this point, and this is where I start working on how do I pronounce it, where do I emphasize, do I change vowels, and then the second section, again, was the perfect answer was it was pretty much the same as the previous one, and that's what the secondary was designed for, was to not really make a lot of improvements, but just to see familiarity and consistency. So there's a lot going on. The last thing I want to mention, and I will put the link in the description. The bass coach, Big Brev, has begun doing basically deep analyses into a cappella pieces on YouTube. He previously did VoicePlay's K-pop Demon Hunter medley, and as of the recording of this today, he did a deep dive into VoicePlay's Valhalla calling. And if you are a bass or you're studying music, it's really fascinating because Brev isn't doing a standard reaction. He's actually taking apart what the different voices are doing and how the arrangement is working. So it's really excellent. I'm going to leave the link in the description. But I've kind of rambled a lot today, and it feels good. We're expanding each day. I'm getting a better feel for what I want to talk about. So, as always, please subscribe if you're watching this casually. If the video is helpful or informative or you enjoy it, definitely click the like, and any feedback you can give, because it is still early days for me, really helps me understand if I'm on the right track or not, at least for doing these videos. So that's going to wrap things up for day 5. Thank you much for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow.